The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Allow me to introduce you to the devil himself, Mr. Edward Theodore Gein. Ed Gein was a very wicked person, very disturbed and demonic. And he wasn't an out-of-towner that came in and people started coming up missing. This was a man that the neighborhood had some level of trust for. Though deemed strange, Edward Theodore Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul, was an American murderer and body snatcher, which means yes, this man actually digged in graves and grabbed bones and brought them to his house and did all kind of wicked stuff with these bones. Also known as the Godfather of Gore, Gein's behavior inspired numerous books and movies. The most popular ones were Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the very disturbing Silence of the Lambs.
He was the inspiration behind the Hitchcock classic movies Psycho, as well as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and to some extent, The Silence of the Lambs. There hasn't really been anyone that shocked the world as much as this guy. Just ask the cops that discovered his house of horrors.
Now, Psycho was a story about a man who was obsessed with his mother. That's where the Ed Gein connection is, because Ed Gein was also obsessed with his mother. One thing you don't know about Psycho is Alfred Hitchcock actually tried to summon the spirits that was dealing with Ed Gein every night when he was writing this screenplay. The actor they got to play Norman Bates was very, very off, like had a disposition that was not normal, much like Ed Gein. Ed Gein had dressed up bones and stuff like that in wigs, and all the people that he dealt with resembled his mother. It was all the people he killed resembled his mother. And yes, Ed Gein was indeed a psycho, a killer, and a demonic spirit dwelt in him. In the case of Norman Bates interacted with his mother, who had been dead for years, dressed up bones with a wig on it, and then dressed himself up like his mother and began to murder people. Now, we don't know how much of that goes into what Ed Gein's mindset is, and you don't even want to know. Who wants to really know the mindset of a killer? It's just to know what kind of people roam this earth. One people in particular produced the most serial killers. Now let's get into Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first movie of its kind. It was really renegaded made. It was savage and gritty. It was also the first Blair Witch, where the footage that was presented people thought was actually real. There was some footage at the beginning that people actually believed was real. They thought the story was real, but the story was based off of Ed Gein, who actually used to remove people's skin, take off their face, and put them upon his. What Texas Chainsaw Massacre excoriates is the energy of the goriness that he did. Psycho more showed his mindset, his demeanor, someone that can stay calm, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre showed the grueling act of actually cutting and sawing, which this man had to actually do to commit these murders that he committed, severing heads and all that. Again, a very disturbed man, as Leatherface was in the story. And if you haven't seen these movies, you might want to check them out. There's many, many more like American Psycho that was based off the deeds of Ed Gein, who's only known to kill 2 people but suspected of killing multiple people. In other words, they know he killed other people, they just ain't got the evidence. Now, the psychological thriller Silence of the Lambs. Some of this script was based off of psychologists dealing with Ed Gein. How did he be so calm saying the most disturbing things? Is that's the demeanor they gave to Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal is a treacherous name amongst the heathens anyway, because Hannibal almost brought their whole palace, their whole kingdom down. Now again, it was expected or suspected that Ed Gein was actually a cannibal. We don't know for sure, but we do know he was very disturbed. Now, The Silence of the Lambs is about an FBI agent who's a psychologist, a special psychologist, come to deal with a man to try to find out about other serial killers, the mindset of other serial killers, which they took from Ted Bundy. They consulted Ted Bundy on numerous occasions when they was looking for other murderers. Just a real sick and disturbed tale that is based off of a real sick and disturbed person. All three of these characters, from Leatherface to Norman Bates to Hannibal Lecter, all three of them were men of very few words. Though they had Hannibal Lecter a lot more intelligent than Ed Gein was, for sure. It was also a mark in Hollywood, were more realistic movies. All three of these were groundbreaking movies in their own right. Psycho was the first movie without a killer. It was a man. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was about a man in the wilderness running around chainsawing people up, a wild, crazy savage that cut people's face off and put them on their face. And Silence of the Lambs was a psychological thriller going deep into the mindset from a counselor's standpoint, a shrink's standpoint, something we hadn't seen in movies up until that point. Much like Ed Gein, we didn't see the likes of him up to the point where he came out. But I assure you there's been plenty in history, some of which that we just simply do not know about. These movies get you thinking. These movies get your heart pumping. These movies make you aware of the wickedness and the craziness that's going around. And guess what? These movies are also breakdowns on what's going on in society. Gein endured a difficult childhood. His father was an alcoholic and his mother was very abusive towards him. Gein idolized her even though she treated him like trash. His brother was concerned and confronted Gein's mother on several occasions about how she treated Edward Gein. Henry died mysteriously during a fire. Though Ed Gein said he was missing, Ed Gein took the police directly to the body.
This was obviously a sickening sight for the deputy that found the body, but inside the house, police got the shock of their lives. As we said, he liked to keep the heads of his victims. Police found 5 heads inside plastic bags, as well as 4 skulls. But more stomach churning, they also found masks, whereby Gein had carefully cut off the faces and kept them intact so he could wear them.
It wasn't until Ed Gein's mother died in 1945 which left him all alone and made him even more disturbed. He cornered off areas of the house and made it some type of a shrine. Gein attracted the attention of the police in 1957 when a hardware store owner named Bernice Warden went missing. Gein had been seen with her shortly before the disappearance. Now, after she had went missing, the police came in there and seen furniture made out of bones, seen clothes made out of a skin. Yes, this is true. This is a very disturbed individual. Later, they found another woman who had came up missing. Her head was chopped off too, and they both resembled his mother. He admitted to killing the women, but pleaded not guilty for reason of insanity. Ed Gein spent the rest of his life in psychiatric hospitals. He died in 1984, with very few people knowing his motives, if anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Edward Theodore Gein, the devil himself.
One police officer told the press, "Some of them have lipstick on and look perfectly natural. If you knew them, you'd be able to recognize them." In fact, Gein was a handyman in many ways, and we are not talking about fixing creaking doors. Police found all sorts of things, and not just human remains. Gein had made lampshades, chair covers, and wastebaskets out of human skin. He had human skulls sitting atop bedposts, and in the kitchen you could find bowls made from skulls.